Hello, welcome back to my world of stuff. It's another retro movie review today, and as promised, it's the incredible Shrinking Man.
The science fiction classic, The Incredible Shrinking Man, one of the best sci-fi films of all time.
Sky, what was that?
I don't know. Some kind of mist.
Look at your chest. They still too loose?
Sure, even the cuffs are dragging.
Gee, they do look kind of big.
I'm getting smaller, Lou, every day.
Well, that's silly, honey. People just don't get smaller.
There's no medical precedent for what's happening to you. I simply know that you're getting smaller. The x-rays prove it beyond any doubt.
Are you going out?
Yes, for a little while.
Where?
Well, just to the corner, to the store.
You'll come right back?
Well, of course I will.
An innovative film featuring fantastic special effects.
Charlie, maybe he's hurt someplace. Maybe he's lost.
We've looked everywhere.
With these bits of metal, I was a man again. If I was to die, it would not be as a helpless insect in the jaws of the spider monster.
Yes, back again with another video. Now, I'm actually recording these videos all on the same day. I've done two already, which have gone up on Thursday. I've done this one later in the evening on Thursday, but I don't want to put too many up in a row, so this will probably go up Saturday, I think. It's The Incredible Shrinking Man, another retro movie review, and this is one which you may recall I mentioned I'd be doing when I reviewed Tarantula recently from this new Region 4 double film disc edition, which you can import. It's got both films on one Blu-ray, but don't be worried about the picture quality because they both look really good. The Incredible Shrinking Man is a classic science fiction film, and it comes from that period, the 1950s, the post-war period, when the atomic threat and the threat of nuclear weapons and radiation were uppermost in people's minds because, of course, within living memory, we'd had the development of the atomic bomb. We'd seen the devastation that it could wreak at Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and I think people were worried about radiation. People knew and had heard about this terrible radiation that could cause sickness and deformity and all these terrible physical abnormalities. And I think that was reflected in the genre cinema at the time. Now, we've had films like Them, mutated giant ants that were created by radiation. And there are a string of films of that type where nature is mutated by the effects of man's experiments with nuclear power. And it's a theme. The theme of science, man and science, of course, continues to this day. We've had that sort of thing ever since, those sort of cautionary wagging fingers in BBC series Doomwatch in the 1970s. Of course, Black Mirror, Charlie Brooker's series, where he very pointedly looks at the potential perils of science. But now it's more in terms of what we create in terms of machine technology and computers rather than radiation. And that sort of fear of irradiation and irradiated life seems to have receded. It was very much a 1950s thing. Incredible Shrinking Man is from 1957, and it's directed by Jack Arnold, who also directed Tarantula, and it stars an actor called Grant Williams. I mean, there's a very small cast to this film, and I use the word small not necessarily as a gag, because it is a very small cast. And he plays Scott Carey. He's a businessman who's on a vacation with his wife on a boat, sort of a luxury yacht, that's been loaned to them by, I think it's her brother. They're just basking in the sun and enjoying the weather, and enjoying each other's company as a fairly newly married couple. She pops down below to get a couple of drinks, but on the horizon there's a strange sort of misty cloud. Before she can rejoin Scott back up on the deck, the cloud passes over the ship and Scott finds himself dusted in a strange sort of, well, dust, I suppose. He literally brushes it off, thinks no more of it. But a few weeks later, he notices that his clothes seem to be getting larger. His suits don't fit as well. Shirts are very baggy at the neck. And the horrific discovery shortly afterwards that he's losing a height. He's becoming shorter. Obviously, he's concerned by this, so he goes to see the doctor, and medical science is a bit baffled. At first, they think it's sort of he's just losing weight, but when it's obvious that he's actually becoming shorter, it's a cause of some alarm. Eventually, he pinpoints the cause when he remembers this encounter with this strange cloud, which is some sort of radioactive dust, which, as far as we know, is the result of some experiment or some test somewhere. We're never really told where it came from, but it's sort of pinpointed that that's where it started. But unfortunately, medical science aren't really up to the task of reversing the effects, and poor old Scott finds himself getting shorter and shorter. First of all, it's not incredibly noticeable until he realizes that he's shorter than his wife, and things are just becoming bigger around him. And then it really comes home in one particularly startling scene where he's the size of a child, and he's sitting swamped in chairs. He has to crane to look out of the window. He's become a public spectacle in a way because the news of his condition has spread, and there are reporters and busybodies outside the house who want to catch a glimpse of this strange shrinking man, and he's dubbed it the shrinking man. And the situation sort of snowballs because the scientists come up with a way to stop the shrinking, and it appears that they've stopped it, but they can't reverse it. So for a while, he remains the same size, which is basically the size of a child. There's a sort of an attempt to make him appear to be a dwarf. And he goes to, one night he's sick of being trapped in the house. He goes out, visits a circus, and he meets up with a short woman. I mean, they're not played by real life short. I don't know if you can still use the word dwarf. I don't know. People of restricted height, but it's very much sort of, a normal sized actress that he's working with around larger props. That's the strength of the film, really. So unfortunately, although he becomes quite close to her, after he meets her a couple of times, he suddenly notices that he's now shorter than her, and that the effects of the treatment are wearing off, and he's still starting to shrink. This is when his nightmare begins. He becomes smaller and smaller, and ultimately his wife, who's doing her best to sort of keep things together, she has to house him in effectively a doll's house. She's now become that small. But something goes horribly wrong when she goes out one day. The door blows open, and the cat comes in, and chaos ensues when he's separated from the house, and he tumbles down into the house's cellar. His wife comes home, sees the cat, sees blood because the cat has nicked him, and assumes the worst, and assumes that Scott has died and been devoured by the cat. But he hasn't. He's down in the cellar, and he's trying to survive in a hostile environment using bits and pieces that have been abandoned in the cellar, and fighting off the advances of a large spider. In fact, it's quite interesting that this particular film is teamed up with Tarantula on this disc. They both share that common element of abnormally sized spiders, although of course in Tarantula it's a huge spider. In Shrinking Man, it's just a normal spider who's facing up against a very small man. The second half of the film is very interesting because the first half is fairly wordy and it's sort of based on outlining the position Scott finds him in, and the terror of losing his stature and becoming small. But the second half is more of a survival story. He's down in the cellar, he's trying to find food and water, he's fighting against the spider. The odds have changed. Life has changed for him. He's trying to survive in a terrifying world. It's heartbreaking, one particular sequence when he's trying to contact his wife, who comes down into the cellar. She's leaving the house because she thinks he's dead. Her brother is taking her away from the house, but they have to go down into the cellar to get something. And he's there, but he's so small now that he can't communicate with them because his voice is just a squeak. And of course, they can't see him. And then the situation continues to get worse for our hero. And the film ends, if you haven't seen it, I'm not going to spoil the ending, but it ends in a hugely philosophical moment in what has been apparently a sort of a rip-roaring sort of science fiction fable. It's got an extremely, I don't know how you put it, heartwarming, but it's just philosophical about the nature of existence and what existence means. Do you have to be a physical presence standing in front of people? Do you have to be able to interact with people? you exist as long as you exist. To say any more will sort of spoil the ending of the film, but it's a very un-Hollywood ending. It's a very, it's not a bleak ending. It is strangely uplifting, even though it doesn't end the way you might expect it to. Visually, I think it stands up very well. I think it works particularly well in those scenes where he's on giant sets, interacting with giant props, sitting on giant chairs, lifting a giant match or a paperclip. Some of the optical effects obviously show their age when they're trying to show him in the same shots as real people, because there are no shadows, so he's just superimposed over it and he's moving along, and that doesn't look quite so good. There are sort of split screen shots that work well, but there are scenes when he's outside, for example, and running along where you sort of, you notice the effects don't quite hit the mark there. But generally, visually, it's very, very good. Good enough, certainly, to draw you into the story. And because Scott is such a likeable character, and you sympathise with his terrible plight, his terrible, unbelievable plight, because, you know, it's not the sort of thing that can happen. But you put yourself in his shoes, small as they may be, and you just feel for him because something terrible is happening, which is totally out of his control. It's just a quirk of fate. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and something terrible is happening, which was going to change his life forever. It's, as I said, it's directed by Jack Arnold with great flair and great professionalism and great style. It's very stylishly done. There's some really good shots, good action scenes, and it's very well put together. It's taken from the book by Richard Matheson, which I read many years ago and got my shelf somewhere. And it's a great example of 1950s sort of paranoia science fiction. Mercifully, it hasn't been remade. I think there was a comedy remake, The Incredible Shrinking Woman, with Lily Tomlin back in the early 80s. Not seen that. I don't intend to see that. I mean, this is ripe for remake, I suppose, with the visual effects you have today. But I worry that Hollywood would not be able to get the message across and deliver the sort of ending that this packs, because I'm not sure that it would have the nerve to do it, to be honest, because it is quite sort of, you know, it pulls no punches. It's The Incredible Shrinking Man. I think it's still available on Blu-ray and DVD in this country. I got it on Blu-ray anyway, but this is a very nice 2-set you can import from Australia if you are so minded, because it's got Tarantula on it as well. But of course, they're both available separately. The Incredible Shrinking Man, then, from 1957. It gets from me a giant size 9, because it is one of the great science fiction films. Hugely recommended. Go and see it if you haven't seen it already. Also, if you like this video, if you like this sort of content, if you look back at previous retro film reviews, if you look at previous unboxings, reviews, bits and pieces, click that like button. More importantly, click the subscribe button, because it does wonders for this channel. We're creeping up slowly. Like and subscribe. Leave a comment. It would be great to hear if you've seen The Incredible Shrinking Man, what you thought of it. Any other films from the 50s that you can recommend, because I do love those old classic genre 50s films, and I'll be reviewing more of those in due course across the channel. That's it for me now then. That's it from me for now then. I will see you all soon. Until I see you next time, don't forget what they say. You keep taking the stuff. Bang!